Have you ever wondered what it looks like to finally reclaim your body, your time, and your voice after a divorce, especially when your faith may have been used to keep you small? This episode brings together six courageous Christian women who share raw, hilarious, and deeply practical stories of learning how to take up space again. Sometimes by making very loud smoothies, sometimes by dancing like nobody's watching, and sometimes by daring to ask, what do I want? If you're ready for a real conversation about finding joy, setting boundaries, and rebuilding your life on your terms, you're in the right place. Let's get started. This season is called The First 365 Days After Divorce. And today I have with me Diana, Marie, Michele, Grace, and Rochelle. These are all divorced Christian women. And we are going to be talking about reclaiming your body, your time, and your voice. Basically, learning how to take up space again in every way, learning how to have fun. I believe that Christian divorced women desperately need to have permission to do this, to take up space physically, emotionally, mentally, especially after a divorce where that probably shrank them down for years, or a relationship that shrank them down for years. So this episode is not necessarily about recovering. It's more about reclaiming. Welcome, ladies. Here's the first question. What was the first thing that you did just for you after your divorce, even if it was something tiny?
Yeah. Well, I did several things that I want to mention, but one of the daily things that I noticed that I began doing and taking up space was making smoothies in the morning. Now, this sounds, it might sound trivial, but I realized I was making smoothies in the morning without having to worry about the blender making too much noise.
Oh, yeah.
And so that was one thing. And then I would play my music really loudly while I was cooking, which I never did those kind of things before. Now,
That's
one of the
beautiful.
really big things that I did was because soon after the divorce, I had started reconnecting with old dreams of mine and allowing them to come up. And one of the dreams I did after the divorce was final was I dared to check on master's programs. And I started searching out those things. And that was a big move for me because it was very scary, but I dipped my toe in. And I just remember how uh, it just felt so good to just be checking in with myself about it. I didn't have to, there was no other, nothing else holding me back, just me, and that was so important. Um, I did end up going to school and now I've gotten my master's, but, just even checking uh, on programs was just a huge step and something that I did for just me.
I love that. You didn't have to get permission from anybody else. You could just make your
Yep.
own big girl decision, right?
Yes.
That's
Yes.
that's great.
Yeah, I would say the first thing that I did right afterwards, and it was something that I had started to do before I left. It was a bit of contentious between him and I was going to work out 3 mornings a week with a local women's group that met at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Um, and when I separated, I had actually separated 2 states away. I went home for a couple months. And when I came back, the gal who ran that knew that I had been separated. She'd been through a horrible divorce before in a similar situation, had gotten bad advice from a church that just made it worse. And so she kind of knew the situation I was in, and she said, "You can keep coming for free. I'm not going to charge you. Keep showing up." And so she had been kind of a lifeline through the divorce in having a place to go work out with other strong and positive women every morning, but knowing her and I met up several times over the couple years that it took to get the divorce finalized. And she was just an amazing, like, just personal friend, but spiritual mentor because she had been through it before. And she still is to this day. I can't find it in my schedule to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and get to that group with the jobs I have now. But we still get together a few times a year and we catch up on things. And so, yeah, that was a huge thing at the time. And I too, like Marie, ended up going back to school, not for my master's, but to get another degree in education, and then started teaching, and then went back again this year to get another endorsement. And so I think you don't have to have it all figured out right away, but as soon as you start to make those small decisions to do things for yourself, the path kind of becomes a little bit more clear as you go.
Yeah. Well, the sky is the limit. You realize that you have freedom to make those kinds of choices. And maybe before you had no freedom to make choices like that.
Oh,
I
yeah,
can't picture.
I would not have been able to go back to school. There would have been an argument
Yeah.
about time it took away from taking care of the kids.
Yeah. Diana, did you want to share something?
Yeah, I'm just noticing that there's some big stuff and there's some small stuff. We got master's degrees and we've got making smoothies, and I think that's so awesome. And I feel like mine is, and we're going to talk more about this, I think, but like just reclaiming some things that we love and stuff. But one of the first things I did was to give myself permission to do what I wanted to do. I just would keep asking myself, what do you want to do, Diana? And I'm like, I want to go see my favorite blues artist in concert. Google that. And then I'm like, he is coming to Milwaukee, booked a ticket. Well, he ended up needing a heart surgery and that got canceled. So I'm like, but I still want to do something for me. What am I going to do? And so I'm like, oh, this comedy show, they're coming to Madison. I can drive to Madison all by myself. And I actually went and had dinner on State Street by myself. Well, I grabbed a piece of pizza, but I ate, all the college kids are walking around and I ate out there. And then the other thing I did, so that's going out and doing stuff. But the other thing I did is I gave myself, and this was a very, very first, like, you're divorced. And then I'm like, what do you need, Diana? I need time for my mind and emotions to just do whatever they need to do. So I actually put on my calendar these words in all caps, nothing day. And I flipped forward several days in my calendar, several months, and I found places to put in nothing days. That's what I wanted to do for me. I felt like freedom.
Yes. Well, you were taking back control.
Yeah.
I know something that I did was actually this is when I was separated, but my separation was like from the time that I separated till I was divorced was almost 4 years. So during that time after he moved out, I started seeing a chiropractor because I had a bad back, and he always said that it wasn't bad. So I couldn't see a chiropractor, but when he moved out, then I went and saw a chiropractor. And then I also saw a Christian female massage therapist in her home. She only did massage for females. And I did that once a month for about a year. And I only did it for the sole purpose of just showing myself that I was like valuable, that my physical health, I'd born 9 children, and my body was in really bad shape, just to show myself that my body was important and it was important to take care of it. And I ended up, after a year, I didn't need those things anymore, but it was good for me to build that connection with myself. Okay. So speaking of that, how did any of you begin rebuilding that relationship with your body, especially if you came out of a marriage like many of us did, where we felt objectified or criticized or invisible or not valuable?
Well, for me, I did come out of a marriage like that. When I came out, I felt very beaten down, that I was never enough. And I also was very unhappy with the menopausal weight I had put on. I mean, all my life, if I put on weight, I would diet. It was just like this discipline that was instilled in me from my mom. And this time it was not coming off, no matter what diet I tried, no matter what I did. And I was just gaining and then gaining. And I just felt so bad about my way I looked. I didn't like to look in the mirror. And so one of the big changes for me was came through one of your classes, Natalie, that I took inside the Flying Higher program. And you were teaching us how to retrain our brain. And you said, I want you to come up with one phrase that you're going to repeat over and over and over the next week. So I knew that I really lacked confidence. I mean, some people may not have been able to tell that on the outside because I'm an extrovert and don't have any problem standing up in front of a room and talking. But on the inside, I was very small and lacked confidence. So I wrote down, I am confident. Another participant in the class wrote down, I carry myself like a queen. And I loved that. So I wrote those two phrases on a piece of paper and I put it up where I could see it all the time. And then there was a long hallway that led into the bedrooms. And at the end of that hallway was a full length mirror. So every time I came down that hallway, I would just stand up tall and I would say, I am confident. I carry myself like a queen. And I would repeat it like 5, 6 times. I repeated it all day, probably longer than a week. But after a while, my brain believed it. And I was,
Crazy, huh?
yeah, it just completely changed me and completely changed the way that I felt about my body. And so anytime I have like that negative thing coming up, I just go, no, I carry myself like a queen and I just stand up straight and just walk in front of a ton of people or whatever, but
Oh my gosh. All of you who are listening, you can steal that from her. Okay. In fact, she wants you to steal that phrase. You go try that for a week or a month and see what happens with you. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Rochelle.
Yeah, for me, it's also giving myself permission to be connected to my body. It's okay and it's not selfish. And of course, I learned that from being with Flying Free as well and Flying Higher program. And I also want to say be patient with yourself because, if you have for many, many years denied yourself, and I'll put that in quotes because I'll mention more about it later. But you for many years you have kind of like not even been conscious about how you felt. It will feel really strange at first, and so for me, it's just a slow realization, right? I read the book The Body Keeps the Score is really, really helpful to me, and even the more recent book that we read, How to Do the Work. So it for me is a gradual consciousness of or becoming aware of how important to keep your body healthy and the interconnectedness between your mind and your body. Some other things that I've started to try also about 4 months ago, I started watching rest and relaxation videos that guides me through tensing and relaxing different parts of my body from top to bottom because it helps me be more aware of how does it feel when that part of my body is tense and how does it feel when it's relaxed. That way I can be more conscious of it. And then another thing I'm learning is to incorporate that into my daily living. So let's say while I'm walking, walking is something I really enjoy, but I didn't realize that usually when I'm walking, I'm solving problems from the past or I'm planning the future. And then by the end of it, the walking is done. And I felt like I just slept walked through the whole thing.
Yeah.
So what I'm learning now is while you're walking, try to be present. And it's going to be a gradual process, like maybe one time while you walk, just focus on listening to the sounds that you hear. What does the leaves of the trees sound like when the wind blows, or listen to the birds or even the bugs, and then maybe, another day, kind of be more aware of how your body feels. How does your feet feel, your legs feel while you're walking, and how does the breeze feel against your skin? Things like that. Just learning to be more present, like even no matter what you're doing, whether you're exercising or lifting weights, just see how your body feels as you're doing it. How does your feet feel against the mat, while you're doing yoga or whatever. And also one thing that I've learned is to like even while you're driving start to scan your body, like which part of your body is tense. And I have to tell you, the first time I did it for the first 10 minutes, and I have like an hour drive to work. So first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, I'm relaxed. And then it's like 10, 15 minutes later, I realized, oh, actually my hands are really clenched around my steering wheel. I really don't need to hold it that tightly. Okay. And then, another, like 30 minutes into the drive, I realized, oh, my shoulders are actually really tense, and I don't know why. I don't need to be that tense. And then it was like towards the end of my drive before I even realized my left foot is flexed the whole time. I don't know why it's not supposed to be doing anything. But so I mean, just things like that. Because it was really strange. For many years, we have kind of ignored our body. Our body's holding all the tension that we felt, all the fear that we felt, all the anxiety. It's all in the body, but we're not even realizing it.
Yes. And when you start noticing that and bringing it to your conscious awareness, that is the first step to actually healing that connection with your body. Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Oh, this is so great. It's already so practical. And we're only, a few minutes in. What about managing your time again without any guilt, especially if you were used to organizing your life around your husband or your family or your church activities and the things, your obligations, or maybe even work? Can anyone speak to that?
Mm-hmm. What Diana said, I did a version of that. I gave myself plenty of blank space in my calendar um, for piddling. I don't know if y'all know what piddling is,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just doing stuff and not really doing it completely. But it's just something I've always enjoyed to piddle. But not only that, blank space so that I could go to spontaneous dinners when friends would ask, which was something that I never did before because it just was not appreciated if I went on spontaneous dinners. So I
It
that
was
blank
not
space.
appreciated. I'm sorry. That's a
Yes,
funny way of
there
putting
were
it.
those around that did not appreciate spontaneous dinners with a
Right.
friend. Um, but also because I was in school, it was very important that I learned to manage my time, like because when I did end up going to school and saying, you know, uh, I need to block out this time, it helped me get used to even managing my time as I, studied or was in my online classes and writing my papers. So I think that just was part of me reclaiming my time.
Yeah.
Just that whole exercise of saying blank space here
Yeah.
was
Didn't it help to think that it
very,
was
very
your
important.
time now too? It was your time.
Yeah.
Like you owned it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
pretty empowering. Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I was maybe in a little bit different situation. I think Marie's kids are a little bit older when she got divorced, and for me, my kids, I had five between the ages of 3 and 13 at the time, and so I had been a stay-at-home mom, and I think I had to adjust to I didn't have the flexibility that I used to have. When you stay at home every day, things can get pushed to the next day,
Hmm.
if it's not urgent. Well, now I had to balance, the kids and where they were going for childcare and work, and I was going back to school. And so it became very intense on the weeks that I had my kids, just to try to make sure it was all getting done. And then my kids would go to their dads for a week, and then it was like nothing. And it took a while to get used to the balancing the extremes of everything on all at once. And then, the silence from, 3:30, 4 o'clock on
Yeah.
when the kids were not with me. Um, and so that was just kind of adjusting a little bit mentality wise of how do I try to find times to relax in what seems like the crunch time when they're all with me and I'm still trying to work and go to school, but still try to find fun and relaxing times with the kids versus not having just this big drop off of energy when they all go back to dad.
Yeah.
So I did end up getting a calendar that was a dual home and like it was like a work from home one. So it had like your work schedule and your home schedule side by side. And so, kind of the things and the appointments that the kids have kind of overlaid with the meetings and classes and stuff that I had on the work side. And I had to do, and I was always pretty good at planning and going ahead a week. I live in a rural area, so it's always been grocery planning. You're only making one trip to the grocery store a week because you're not going to drive the 35, 40 miles every day. And so meal planning and stuff like that, I was already in the mindset for so many years of I got to plan my whole week out and get it ready to implement it. And so a lot of that stuff kind of helped carry through that. What does this week look like for daycare, for food, for this, and having things all planned out and written out. Now, um, 5 years later, my kids are 5 to 18, or sorry, not 8 to 18. Things are a little bit more relaxed. I don't have to worry about the daycare. I now work in the same district as my kids. There is no daycare. They come and go with me. My older ones can look after the younger. Some of that stuff, I now have a lot more free time. And so now I don't rely so much on that physical, everything written out. I still use, an online thing. I have to set reminders like crazy because I know which things that a 30-minute reminder isn't enough. I probably need to remind myself the day or two before because there's still a lot coming on. I mean, I had a friend once say, you're not as busy when your kids get older, but it's just a different busyness. You're not as hands-on, but your mind has to hold on where everybody is going, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
so I still my online reminders, and we have like a 5 by 5 huge calendar on our dining room wall that has everything written down, color coded, who's going where every day. We talk at the beginning of the week of who's going everywhere, and then the morning, remember this is who's going everywhere after school and stuff like that. So there's still a lot of that stuff that just um, needs to be implemented, but it seems like it's a little bit relaxed now that the kids are a little older. And
Yeah.
so if there's anyone out there and you got the little kids and you feel like you have to be hands-on all the time, like it does get better. They do grow up. They can get themselves from point A to point B, and you don't have to, micromanage all the drop-offs and stuff as much.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that too. It's a season. It's a really crazy season when you have little kids. And I remember being in that season and I look back on it now and I think, how did I even survive that? Like, how did I get through my days? But you just take one day at a time. You try to stay present. You do what you have to do and you grind through it and it does pass. It's going to get better. If you're listening to this and you're in that phase, it will get better. All right. Not for many, many years though. No, just kidding. Well, I'm not kidding, but I'm not trying to discourage anyone. All right. Next question. How did you start rediscovering your voice, speaking up for yourself, setting boundaries, or even just sharing your opinions again without being afraid?
For me, the thing that helped me the most rediscover my voice was discovering a part of me that truly believed I didn't matter. And I believed all my life that I didn't matter. I wasn't in touch with that belief until I really started to work on myself. But once I got in touch with it, and then I took the course within the Flying Higher program called Healing the Relationship with Yourself, really taught me how to really dig deeply to get in touch with that part of me that believed that. And so giving that part time and space for me to focus on that part and allow all the grief that had been buried for so long on the inside to just come forth as I recalled all the different things that people had said to me, circumstances I had been in that just reinforced that belief that you don't matter, you don't matter, you don't matter. And then being able just to grieve all of that out and allow it as much as it was uncomfortable. And then after just validating that part of me, saying, yes, you had a right, you still have a right to feel that way with the way that you were treated, with the circumstances that did happen, with the things that people said. And then through doing those things, I received so much healing just by giving that time, allowing the grief, and validating that part. And interestingly, that began really restoring my voice, where I began to trust myself, trust the things that I thought, decisions I made, the way that desires I had, things I wanted to share, my opinions, taking charge. And it really started to give me back my more confidence and empowerment. And it's funny because now sometimes it's as if I'm on the outside of myself looking in, and I look at myself and I just kind of think, who are you? Like what? I like who you've become.
Isn't
But
that
it's
awesome?
so yeah, it's so natural now for me to have a voice, but at the same time it's like wow, it's just incredible. So
That it is incredible because what it is you're blossoming into the person that God made you to be all along. And you finally get to, show up. And that's a beautiful thing for you. And it's also a beautiful thing for everyone around you to get to experience who you really are.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that once you get to the point where you can see yourself from outside yourself, that's a sign of maturity. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. Yeah, for me, it is from renewing my mind, just learning and understanding what God really said in his word. Because, I was in the same kind of environment you guys are. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't realize that I wasn't really interpreting God's word correctly, I've learned that when Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself, I can't neglect myself. I always thought that God and then others and then me, but I never thought about the fact that if you don't love yourself, how are you supposed to love your neighbor as yourself? So that just doesn't work. And also, the verse I was saying earlier, deny yourself. For me, I thought about that as meaning, I just ignore my own needs and and do not value my own desires. But I'm learning that deny yourself actually means letting go and letting God love me, letting his sacrifice be the only reason that I feel approved, trusting and resting in the fact that he's forgiven me and he's delighted in me. And it has nothing to do with my efforts. So I don't have to keep trying, so God, saved us by grace through faith. In the same way, I think we need to live our lives on earth by grace through faith, so giving
Yes.
myself grace as well. And then the second thing that I've learned to renew my mind is by learning about boundaries. Like from reading the Boundaries book by John Townsend and Henry Cloud, learning that it's not rude to set boundaries, and in fact, it's necessary. I really like the illustration about boundaries is like, this is my yard and that's your yard. But if I keep watering your yard and not watering my yard is gonna die. And I never thought of the fact that because I've always thought, oh, when God gave me children, when God gave me a husband, it's like a stewardship, right? I'm supposed to serve and everything, but I forgot that I'm also a steward of myself. Our
Yes.
bodies are, our temples, right? And I forgot that. I forgot to take care of that temple. So I just haven't, um, you know, thought about that before. So by renewing my mind, I become more aware, and also um, given myself permission, to set my boundaries. I think that's important. And then as you learn to value yourself more, it'll give you the boldness to go ahead and set those boundaries. And for me, one other thing that's been helping me is just learning about the Enneagram and how, I'm a 9. So I'm not even aware of the fact that I forget about myself and I assume other people's agenda into my life. So just waking up to that was very important, and then letting go, because oftentimes the Enneagram is really just our coping mechanism, our defense mechanism. It's because of a fear. It's because we're afraid we'll be rejected. We won't have relationships. So we tend to do those things. But, now, so for me now, taking that risk, going ahead and setting the boundaries and see where it falls, right? And discovering that I'm not totally rejected. But I also think it's important to work on yourself, right? Because if you are rejected, it's good to have your own back. So it's also learning to be my own best friend, to love my own company, and to trust that I'll be there for me. So those things are all so important to learn.
Yeah. You're saying so many amazing things. All of you are. I want to say, if you're listening to this podcast episode and you're thinking, gosh, I've never even heard some of these concepts before, or this is so far from the way I think or from where I'm at, I want you to know that all of these women have gone through the Flying Higher program. Well, I think most of you are still in it. And that's where they're getting it from other resources, because I recommend stuff all the time to you guys, right? Books and things, I send you guys down so many different rabbit trails, but they're getting a lot of help from that program. And if you want to join us and join all of us, we'd all love to have you. Just go to joinflyinghigher.com to learn more about that. Okay, let's talk about having fun after divorce. Can you give some examples of ways that you started to have fun? Because I think fun is important.
It's so important. So in 2018, 2 years before my divorce, I started backpacking. Um, so after the divorce, though, I could do that more. And so I started going on more backpacking trips, even got a certification in wilderness medicine and
Oh, wow.
started backpacking by myself. So in 2023, I went on my first, just one night, 2 days, one night trip backpacking by myself. And so I do that regularly now. Well, I make sure to do that two times a year, one in the spring and one in the fall. Other backpacking trips too with groups, but I love the solitude in the forest, and that backpacking. And to me, the freedom that I can go out in the forest when I want, plan that trip, there's nothing else like it. And then I want to share another story. I've always loved to dance, always. The only opportunity that I would ever have to dance would be weddings, right? Well, I mean, you don't go to a lot of weddings, as much as I wanted to dance. And but anyway, so last year there was a meetup. I don't know if y'all know about Meetup, but it's this app that shows you different activities that are around in your area. Now I've been getting emails for years, but this one particular email last year caught my attention because it said dancing. And I was like, oh, okay, what is this? And it was at this place that I was familiar with, and it wasn't a bar. It's just a venue where they would have a DJ come in. And so I went by myself because none of my friends went with me. And it was the most fun. I have met so many friends now, and I go dancing regularly.
No way. Like, what kind of dancing
And
is it?
oh, you just
Describe this.
just freestyle. You're dancing like the very first one I went to was like a disco dance party. So you're dancing to like, Dancing Queen and Michael
Yeah.
Jackson and, those kind of things. It's so fun.
Oh my word, it sounds amazing. So there's no like when I picture dancing, I picture in a bar and then guys are pawing you and like I don't
Oh,
want to do anything
no.
like that. But this does not sound
See,
like that.
no, and there's all kinds of like the I wrote a post about it because it was such a beautiful experience that
Hmm.
there was such a diverse group of people there. And I just looked around and I honestly felt God's delight in what was happening in that room because we weren't worried about their status, your beliefs, your sexual orientation, none of it. We were just all there in community having fun. And it
Yeah.
was just beautiful. And I
Joy.
was like, joy.
Yeah.
And really, it made me think, oh, well, was probably the vision that Jesus had for the church
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
his community.
That's so sad. Because that is
I mean, it
definitely
was just
not what
beautiful.
that is so incredible. That reminds me of watching the music video Brave, Sarah Bareilles' song Brave for the first time, and all those different people are dancing and they're just like so free. I bawled the first time I watched that because I wanted that freedom so badly. I wanted to be able to express myself in that kind of way without being afraid of what other people were going to say. And it was so beautiful to watch other people doing that. So I imagine that's what you experienced when you looked around and saw everyone dancing like,
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely. Yeah, it was
Diana,
beautiful.
do you have any?
Yeah, I dance in my kitchen,
Yeah,
going
same.
to a disco party. That is one of the things that I did though. Before I say anything else, though, I just have to say the last question when Grace answered, she just gave everybody a master class and
Yeah.
and it's so much wisdom, and I just love hanging out with all of you guys and it's incredible. Okay, so I made a list on my phone and I just found it, and it said reawaken, but this is actually kind of my joy things I wanted to do with reclaiming joy in my life. Well, I used to be a worship leader and I haven't totally reclaimed that one, but I will be because I love it. I love singing and doing music and worshiping God. But I had Brewers on here. I used to love going to Brewers games. So guess what I started doing? Going to Brewers games. It's so fun. so fun to go and hear the crack of the bat and eat a hot dog. And, I'd go on, like, take my stepdad, take one son. Last Mother's Day, I went with all my kids, best. Another sports thing was Packers. I do have some season Packer tickets I inherited from my dad because you can pass them down on your family. So I started actually going to games again. Travel. I went to New York by myself. Yes, I knew people there when I got there, but I'm like, fly by myself, stay at hotels by myself, walk around with a backpack. That's all I brought, and explore Manhattan. I've had coloring on my list because when I was a kid and we went to my grandma's, she would host coloring contests for me and my sisters. And we'd all get out the crayons and color. And we started doing, like, when we were like 10 years old, we're like, ooh, the shading and this other, like, it was serious crayon coloring. So I bought myself coloring books and markers, and it brings me joy. And I'm like, I don't care what anybody, going to the movies, I go by myself. It's fine. Sailing, I haven't done that one again, brings me joy. If you're watching on YouTube, there are sailboat pictures behind me because sailing brings me joy. And photography, I've been doing more of that on my phone. And Spanish, I mean, I have this list. I have Duolingo, and I'm relearning Spanish on my phone, and I could do more. And every time I do it, I also realize in my mind, so this is that renew your mind type concept again, too. I'm engaging it at a deeper level. I'm like, I am doing something that brings me joy. I notice it. I'm consciously experiencing it. I'm acknowledging it, because we can just get lost in the doing and our mind's doing its own thing. And then we forget to engage that part of us that awakens that joy. And so anyway, that's a little bit how it's going on my journey. And it's very mindful and purposeful.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all those practical ideas. One thing I've noticed so far in this discussion, and really in all of the discussions we've had so far in this podcast, is that nobody is talking about, well, that's not true. I guess we touched on it maybe a titch last time, and we will have episodes where we go into this in more detail. But so far, you're all giving ideas of ways to find joy and to develop yourself that don't involve trying to find another husband. Okay. And I think that's important, because when we need to find ourselves first. I mean, there's nothing wrong with finding another husband, but I really do think that it's important to see that we can have an amazing, loving relationship with ourselves that brings that's life-giving and fulfilling. And then if we bring that person into a relationship that ends up forming, whether you're pursuing it or it accidentally happens, I think then you're bringing your best self into that relationship. And also you're able to recognize when that relationship is going to align with you and who you are, who you really are now. You don't need that person to be who you really are. You already know who you really are. And that person maybe complements it or, enhances it. And then you can say no to those who don't complement and enhance that. Okay, so I just wanted to touch on that, but let's talk about the role that for either your friendships or your community. Some of you guys have, Marie getting out there in the community and dancing, or even online groups have helped to play in reclaiming different parts of yourself.
Yeah. The online support groups, I was in Flying Free first and now Flying Higher. I can't see ever not being in Flying Higher. But at the same time that I was in that group, Flying Free, I was in Conquer, Leslie Vernick's Conquer. And I did her whole thing for a year. Both of those, yours and hers, both important at that time. But then once I finished that, I was in Conquer for like a year. But it was just the camaraderie, the constant sharing your story, getting feedback from others, which we do that in the forum in Flying Free. I did not know how important it was for me to hear other women that had experienced the same thing. Because for so long, you think, where I did, I thought something is wrong with me. This is, I'm doing this wrong. It was that kind of thing. So it's really healing to find people that are experiencing the same thing that you have and that you hear, because we were all at different places. There were some ahead of me in the journey. So it was so good to hear, okay, that's what's coming. One of the best things, I listened to every butterfly story like I binged them, because they filled me with such hope, um, I, that I could not get enough of them. And I was actually disappointed when I had listened to them all, But so that was very important, that online support. And then, I've made friends in the group. I mean, I see there are women that I have met in Conquer and in your program, Natalie, that I meet with in person. So, these are real friendships. And then I think also my cohort in my grad school program, I mean, some people would think, what is it? That was so important to me. I don't know. It just was so transformational to me on the spiritual side. So I was doing this whole journey of growing spiritually and untangling my faith while healing from this divorce. And there was just something beautiful and unique about that cohort. I needed them because they showed me Jesus. I
Mm-hmm.
think they helped my distorted view of God. They restored it, or made it clearer and truer,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. Thank
Well,
you.
thank you, Marie. I agree with Marie. I think that my the community has been very important to me, the online community of Flying Free. And Diana, I want to thank you for your encouragement. I want to say I've benefited from you and Natalie and Marie so much. I mean, I've listened to your podcast as well, the Renew Your Mind podcast, and all the coaching sessions that you've done. Um, uh, when you take on Natalie's place sometimes. So I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I think for me, we just have to be more flexible about what we think community is now. So when I filed for divorce, I have just only been in this area for a little over a year, so I didn't have that just friendships here yet physically as much. So I've had to be more in touch with my best friends from in the past. And I have to say that I'm just very blessed. God gave me some really good friends who, even though they were in the same, religious circles we were in, they were able to understand where I was coming from and didn't reject me. I was kind of got disconnected from the church here and also just the traditional family, but I will have to say that the several half a dozen best friends I've had from the past, I can't have done it without them. I spent a lot of time on the phone or whether it's Zoom, just use technology because every time I learn something new, I have to process it with someone, and that processing is so important. And the fact that they accepted me was very empowering and encouraging to me. So I would just say be creative and be flexible, kind of like Marie was saying, like your community doesn't have to be like you that the way it's you used to think, like you have to be part of a church establishment or whatever, so but yeah, flying free, flying higher has been very really great for me. And listening to a variety of podcasts. I mean, for me, I also kind of like Diana's podcast. I also listen to like typology, and that's also very helpful for me. The Eden podcast, because then you hear other people, from even outside the divorce world that they're also growing in certain areas the same direction that you are. And to me, that's very encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many great resources out there that don't cost anything. Okay. The next question is about our faith and our spiritual practices. How did that area of your life either support or even complicate your journey toward reclaiming your body and your time and your voice?
Yeah. Well, I mentioned earlier that mine was a parallel journey of me untangling my faith, my relationship with Jesus from man made traditions and a distorted view of God that I had. And at the same time, I was doing that. I was reconnecting, remembering, and recollecting. I love that word, recollecting all the parts of me that I had hidden away. And
Mm.
so, um, and you know, you don't know about them. They're coming up as you're learning all this stuff. And so you're like, oh yeah, I remember that part. And so what was important for me is I stepped away from the local church for a while. That was a necessary part of my journey. I needed to do that in order to heal. And then I gave myself permission to wait until I felt like going again. So
Yeah.
now, in the meantime, you know, I was in grad school and we were learning. I was in grad school for Christian spiritual formation. So I was learning these different things. And so I wrote a lot, and I consider that a spiritual formation, a spiritual discipline. Um, and at the same time, what I needed more than anything during that time, and I didn't know it, I could have never named it except looking back on it now, was, and Grace, you talked about this earlier. I needed to know that God's love for me had nothing to do with my performance, nothing to do with my ministry, nothing to do with my tithing. That his delight in me was because I am his daughter. And and that happened for me. And of course, there was nothing I did to make that happen. Um, so the spiritual practice, for me, was a lot of writing and a lot of sitting in silence. And during that time, I will never forget it. Jesus became to me the good shepherd. And I'll never forget how one day I was imagining him and holding me and saying, "They're there." You know how you do a baby? It's like they're there, you know, when you're trying to soothe them.
Mm-hmm.
And that has just, he's the good shepherd to me now. And um, so there's no specific spiritual practice in there, except writing was very important to me, and silence, really just sitting in silence.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, mine was pretty similar to Marie's. I, as well, had to step away from the church. I divorced a pastor. And so, also being very small, rural community, I just didn't really feel like I had anywhere to go. And I felt like all eyes were on me. And so, I did much more of the at-home cocooning. Um, Flying Higher really became my church on Sunday mornings. And so taking in all of that while also doing daily devotions that I just, downloaded on my Kindle, a lot of journaling. I think I journaled more in the couple years after the separation and divorce than I ever have before. And it wasn't just um, getting my thoughts out, but they were also just full of written prayers to God about who I was and what I needed and some questioning things. I had done a lot of the untangling before the divorce. Um, and so for me, I know, I mean, I've heard so many women in Flying Higher really struggle with that faith. I didn't necessarily have that. I had already done a lot of the wrestling in the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I walked out, I had a pretty secure foundation in who God was. And it was more, um, I don't want to say it was exciting because it was still the most painful, terrifying, years of my life getting out of the marriage. But to see the way that God worked and the doors that were opened and the dreams and the visions and the way he spoke through other people and things just started to happen in ways that you could not have explained or justified. It That's what makes it exciting. At the time, it didn't feel exciting. It was still terrifying and scary. Um, but to actually let go of what you'd been told Christianity is supposed to look like and following God is supposed to look like, and to see the God of the Bible show up in your life in tangible ways, in the same way that he showed up in those stories of the Bible. Um, like I said, it is exciting. And so that's really just how I got through. Lots of prayer, lots of devotion. Over time, I began to even fully let go of even that daily devotion, in realizing that I don't have to have a daily devotion to be connected to God. There's nothing bad with them. Some of them are wonderful and some of the most beautiful things written, but to let go of, there is actually no religious practice that I have to do, and I am still accepted and loved and welcomed in God's arms and as a part of his world. And
Yeah.
so I live more like that day in, day out now. And I feel like the conversation between God and I is much more fluid and honest and genuine.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I will piggyback off of that and say in order to reclaim my own relationship with God, apart from how other people said a relationship with God is supposed to look like, I had to take a break from reading the Bible for a while. And I was an avid Bible reader from the time I was a small child. My mom taught us to read the Bible every single day, and I did. I read through the Bible many, 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 many times over the course of my years. But I took a break from it because it had been used in certain interpretations of it had been weaponized really against me for so long. And I wanted to breathe and heal with the Holy Spirit, because I knew I had a connection with the Holy Spirit within me. And I just I was like, okay, God, can I have a relationship with you without reading the Bible? I wonder if my relationship with you is only connected to this book, or if it's something more than that. And I found out that it was something so much more than that. But now, after many years, then I finally have been reconnecting with the Bible again. But I'm reading in Flying Higher, we're reading through a fresh version. It's a newer version, a newer translation called the Mirror Bible. And it is like incredible. And I think we're all just feeling like, wow, God is so much more amazing than we were taught that he was. It's so life-giving. It aligns with what I know deep in my core and what I've experienced of who God is and his character. And it's a Bible that I can actually read and endorse. All right, so let's wrap this whole episode up by going around. We'll do like a round robin. If you want to share, you can, but you don't have to. But if you could go back and sit down and put your arms around your newly separated self or your newly divorced self and tell her about this idea of how she's going to reclaim her full whole life again, what would you say to her?
Yeah, what I would say to her is do not fear. I mean, since I've been divorced, I've realized more and more how often Jesus said that, do not fear. He will take care of you. He sees you, he hears you. Like, hey, I think about Hagar a lot. She was a nobody. She was really cast aside and she was very depressed. And then God said, look up. And when she looked up, she saw the well. And God also gave her a purpose. He said, I'm going to bless your son, and you're going to have many descendants as well. God sees you and hears you just as he sees and hears Hagar.
Yes, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I would tell her, just take the next step, no matter how small. Just make the next move, even if it's just lifting your head, you know, because some days that's what it felt like, but that's all I could do. But yeah, just take the next step, and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, I would say, because a lot of us were already on the journey, and the people listening, and you're recently divorced, you've probably already been on a lot of this journey of reawakening yourself. So I say keep listening to your own voice. Notice that this new place in your journey is no longer about appeasing anyone else. It's your journey now, and it's okay to own that. And so now is the time to ask, what do I want? That's not selfish. That's taking ownership of our lives.
Yeah.
What do I need? That's not selfish. That's taking ownership of your own body and soul and mind. And then when you get the answers to what do I want, what do I need, trust your answers. It's okay to take care of you. And now is the time to do it.
Yes.
I would tell her breaking free feels great and also bewildering, like jumping into a world you know very little about. It'll take time to feel motivated again, and that's okay. Give yourself that time. When you broke free, oh, wait, you're going to encounter a zillion decisions, but you were made for this moment, and that God has equipped you for this moment.
Yes. Amen.
Yeah, and I would say you don't have to be afraid to be yourself. You're likable, you're lovable, and the world needs you as you are, not as you were told you had to be.
Yes. Thank you so much. What a beautiful group of women. I'm so thankful for you for sharing your time with us. We get to get together again for next week's episode. And I'm excited to talk about handling holidays, birthdays, and other emotional landmines next week. So until that time, for the rest of you, thanks for listening and fly higher.